It's kind of dark in here. I got the light on. It's dark outside. It's getting really cloudy. Anyway, it's Friday, and it's that time of day where I talk about the movies I watched this week. Now, as usual, this video, I don't really want to make it too long, so I will not delve into too much of the movies. You know what I mean? So I don't want to spoil them for anybody. What I'll tell you is what I watched. Now, I did watch a movie called, on TCM that is, Bette Davis and Paul, what is his name? Paul Lucas from 1943, Watch on the Rhine, where Bette Davis' character and her husband, Paul Lucas, they're over in Europe, and they decide to go home for a visit to see her mother and her brother. Anyway, her husband's kind of involved in underground, I guess, over in Europe, you know, fighting against the Nazis. And so in the visit that they do have with her mother, this gentleman that hangs around the house or visits kind of wonders or finds out who Bette Davis's husband is. So it's kind of cagey like that, right? So he's trying to find out who he is. But anyway, you have to watch the movie to basically find out what it's all about and stuff. But it was a very good movie from 1943, like I said. Very interesting, and I give it a good 7, high 7 out of 10. And the other one was from 1942, a movie called To Be or Not to Be. And it stars Maureen O'Hara and Charles Laughton. Yes, it has to be the occupied. It's occupied Poland. The Nazis show up, right, and start running the show, and you know, you toe the line, or you know, something happens to you, you disappear. Anyway, Charles Laughton's character's a teacher in the school, and he lives with his mother, his old mother. She kind of looks after him. He calls himself a coward. You know, he's always, when the sirens go off and there's some kind of explosion, he kind of twinges all the time. Now, this movie is very hard to find on YouTube or anywhere for that matter. I can't really, I don't even know if I could find it in the book anywhere in my movie books, To Be or Not to Be. So I don't know why that is, but it's all about the Nazis and how they go about, you know, getting information from people and squealers and shooting people out back and stuff. So, and Charles Laughton ends up going to jail, and he comes out and stuff like that. And people say he's brave, and he says he's not. And then he has to go to court, and then he turns out to be his own lawyer, and ends up, well, like I said, I can't tell you the ending of it because that's spoilers. I try not to spoil anything. But To Be or Not to Be, I hope I'm not, wasn't imagining watching this, because I have it. I just can't find any information on it. But if anybody knows or heard of this movie, let me know. So, you know, I'm not alone in my thinking that, does anybody know this movie? Maureen O'Hara, I think this movie's her third or fourth movie? I can't remember now. But yeah, so there you go. I think her second movie was Hunchback of Notre Dame. That was her second one. But anyway, let's move on. So the other movie I watched was a movie on Crave TV, which is Rogers. Indian Horse. A young Canadian boy wants to be a hockey player. He's a pretty good hockey player. There's only one thing wrong with him back in the 70s. He's an Indian. And back for a long time, Indian people didn't have it very good. Now, the white people, in this movie, see, I'm not sure about this history, to be honest, and it's embarrassing to myself, but there's a lot of, this movie has to do with the Catholics and the nuns and, you know, school they took the Indians to children and they wanted to turn them, actually, in my way of looking at it, from what I read, they wanted to turn them into white people, basically white people that believed in God, you know, cut their hair, threw away all their Indian stuff, and it was terrible, terrible what the white people did to the Indians. Well, that's another completely other topic and another discussion somewhere else. But it's very, very bad. I mean, the white people have been doing this to the Indians for a very long time, you know, and it was very big back in the 50s and 60s and that, and taking Indians away from their parents and putting them in houses and homes and schools and stuff, and, you know, like I said, trying to turn them into a white person and get rid of anything that the Indian people believed in, throw everything out into the garbage. You're now a white person. Very, very bad for the Indians. So the movie, the young hockey player, turns out to be a very good hockey player, but he, back in the Reggie Leach days, you know, with the Philadelphia Flyers, there wasn't too many hockey players that were Indian back then. But it's a very good story, and it's based on some truths, truths that things really did happen that way. So if you haven't seen Indian Horse, I'd recommend it. I give it an 8 out of 10. Very interesting story based on some truths actually here in Canada. And the Catholics, I don't know, Protestants did this too, or anybody else did it to the Indians. I'm embarrassed to say that I don't really know the whole story. So that's it for that. And I watched TCM. I watched The Big House, 1930, with Chester Morris, Wallace Berry, and Louis Stone. Louis Stone was the gentleman who played Andy Hardy's father in the Andy Hardy movies from the second movie on. So that's who Louis Stone is. He's a warden in this movie. And a young Robert Montgomery. So that's all about these men that are in the big house, and they try to make a break for it and stuff like that. And so, you know, if you like movies that, especially the older movies about the big house, this is a good movie. And Wallace Berry plays a very good character. So that's a good one too. So I think I gave it a 7. Good story. You can watch it again. And the other one I watched on Netflix, I think just came out on Netflix this month, February sometime, I guess. I think so. I'm not 100% sure. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas. You know, he's locked in his house. He has a bracelet on. I was like, he can't get out of the house and stuff. But it's fun. It's funny. But, you know, he has to help Michael Douglas and his daughter trying to find their building, which is shrunk from this other ghost character. Anyway, it's not as good as the first one. I thought Ant-Man was really good. This one's okay. It's not wrong with it. You can watch it. But it only gets a 6 out of 10. It's, like I said, you can watch it, but it's nowhere near as fun or good as the first one. And let's move it on. So, Life of the Party, this was on Crave TV also, and this one stars Melissa McCarthy. Yeah, so Melissa McCarthy in one of her movies. This movie's funny, has its funny moments. And what happens is her husband wants a divorce. So, anyway, in amongst getting a divorce, she decides to go back to college, and her daughter's already there in college, so you know, she goes back to college and spends time with her daughter and all her friends and stuff. And they eat some chocolates that has some marijuana in it, and they all get stoned, and goes to her husband's wedding and wrecks everything and stuff like that. So it's not a bad movie. It's a fun movie. It has its moments, right? You know, it's okay. I don't know if you want to watch it again. One watch might be sufficient. So it's one of those kind of movies. Watch it, and you probably never want to watch it again, but it's good for a laugh. So I give it a 7 out of 10 for that one. And the other one I watched was TCM was Fantastic Voyage. Anybody as old as me has to remember The Fantastic Voyage, 1966, starring Raquel Welch. I'm pretty sure this was her first movie. Could be wrong, but I think it was her first movie. Stephen Boyd has to do with this man who gets his brain wrecked a little bit, right? And they have to go inside his body and through the vein, like in through his neck or something, and go fix this thing that's in his brain, right? So, of course, there's five or six of them that go in this little miniature. They shrink this sub. It looks like some kind of sub, but they shrink it, right? And they put it in his blood cell, this gentleman's blood cell. And the ship goes traveling through his blood cell to get to his brain. Of course, there's somebody on board that wants to sabotage this, doesn't want this to happen. So, as we watch the movie, we don't know who it is, but somebody's on there doing some shit, right? So you have to watch the movie to find out who it is and what happens. But I remember seeing this movie, although I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I can't remember the last time I seen this movie. But I do remember, I know for a fact that I went to the show in 1966 and seen this on the big screen at the downtown on Yonge Street, up here in Yonge Street, back in Toronto, back in my younger days. I pretty well almost went to the show every Saturday night back in those days. I used to sell newspapers down at Queen and Yonge Street, you know, and stand on the corner and get your paper. I sold them from 9 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock on a Saturday night at the corner of Queen and Yonge, right in front of the bank there. But I make about $35 for a Saturday, which in 1966, 65, 67 was a lot of money for a kid. Yeah. Anyway, as I say, that's another story. But yeah, I used to have my own money. I used to shop at the Bay. Anyway, what else did I watch? Oh yeah, I watched another Penny Marshall directed movie, A League of Their Own. A League of Their Own from 1992. Tom Hanks has a few good one-liners in this one. And the most famous one that we all know is that there's no crying in baseball. So yeah, so this is a very good movie. You can watch this movie time and time again. It's a very good movie. It's based on the Second World War when all the players in baseball went to fight and there was no baseball. So they put together a girl league, I guess, you know, to have baseball, I guess. And I think the league lasted about 11 years until the early 50s. But Gina Davis' character and her sister ended up playing, and Gina Davis' character only played for 1 year. But they had a get-together so many years later, and she ends up going back, and then she ends up reminiscing about playing baseball. And that year she played baseball. Very good movie. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen A League of Their Own, watch it, get it, whatever. Gets a nice 8 out of 10. And the last one, I'm pretty sure it's the last one. Hopefully it is. Terminator 2. With extras. Judgment Day. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Well, they send back a Terminator to kill John Connors. This guy kind of reminds me of the Silver Surfer in the Marvel movie thing. That's what he reminds me of. So yeah, so he goes back in the time to save John Carter. So there's Terminator, of course, the first movie, and Terminator 2. The first two are always the best in the series. I mean, there's other movies. I don't know if they're as good as these, the 1 and 2, but I like the first and the second one the best. So this is a very good movie. Interesting. You can watch it again and again. This one gets an 8. The Terminator Judgment Day. That's it, people, for the movies I watched this week. So I do hope you enjoyed that. I hope you tune in next week for another Friday or another week of watching movies. So have a good weekend. It's a holiday here in Toronto, Canada. Canada has a holiday. Family Day, it's called. when you get a day off and you spend it with your family, and you go hiking, and you go tobogganing, and you walk around Toronto in the slushy streets and the drippy waters and leaky places where the car comes by and splashes water on you. It's a great time here in Toronto. Everything's melting, and cars intentionally drive by and splash you. True story. Anyway, talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Hey, and keep watching those movies.